Web development does not need to be nearly as complex as it is. By the end of this video, you'll understand how programming with observables is like working on a higher dimension than with promises. You'll understand why they solve more complex problems with fewer errors and less code than anything else available in JavaScript today. To understand, let's start at the beginning. In the beginning, there were values, and it was good. In particular, numbers existed to count quantities of things. There was no notion of a future number or a negative number. There wasn't even a notion of a zero. Several thousand years after we began counting things, we invented the zero. This introduced a null value, an absence of any value. Another 1,000+ years later, and we invented computing. But in computing, the null value often breaks our code or makes it less clear. You don't know if you have something or you have nothing. And the ubiquity of the null reference exception shows what problems a null value can cause. But we created an abstraction to smooth over those problems, something that would allow seamless interoperation between values and non-values. That abstraction layer was the collection, also known as the list, enumerable, or the iterable. Today we use the iterable to seamlessly work with values and non-values. If iteration sees an empty list, it does nothing. A list of 1, it does something once, and so on, through a potentially infinite number of values. One doesn't ask if a value is null, one just iterates over all there is, and this is good. But with the advent of distributed programming, many values we need are no longer synchronously available. The notion of a future had to exist. It's required to be able to work with a value whose value will exist only at some point in the future. Enter promises, and like the null value, the challenges they brought with them. Now, a JavaScript promise might have been designed to include a value that is knowable now, but its creators intentionally decided to limit promises to values that are only knowable at some point in the future. There's a minimum time a promise must exist in the future. It's called a tick. This produces a new tension. Is a value, or is it a promise? It's challenging to compose, to interoperate between future values and present values. Race conditions and difficulty writing correct, simple code are the costly symptoms. It's the same kind of tension that iterables solved, just rotated 90 degrees. So one must ask, would it be possible to span this entire 2D plane with a new kind of value? One that relieves the tension between synchronous and promised values, between single and multiple values. And there is. It was born in 2012. It's called the observable. Observables can contain any number of values over any amount of time. An observable can represent a synchronous process, like a file removal, that produces no values. An observable can represent the synchronous value 5, or the synchronous non-value empty, or even the first 5 Fibonacci numbers. An observable can represent the result of a single AJAX request, or many items separated by time, such as a stock ticker feed or a stream of user clicks. Observables are often referred to as streams, but now we see they can model any subset of a stream as well. This flexibility makes observables suited to a much wider set of use cases than promises. Observables unify the two dimensions of time and multiplicity into a single data type that composes with others seamlessly. And all the values we currently work with can be upcast or lifted into an observable. When you use a superset of the data types, the problems resulting from their mismatch simply go away, and you can count on that. Web development does not need to be nearly as complex as it is. Only 33 years after the dawn of web development, we can now interoperate more easily than before by using observables. And it didn't take thousands of years like the invention of the zero. So please follow up with these links to learn how to apply observables, RxJS, and the Omnibus RxJS library, which help you incrementally add observables to the apps you're building. Thanks for listening.